Hey, how's it going, everyone? It is Drea. We're back with another chapter of Fairy Tale 100 Year Quest, chapter 121, The Pair's Wish. The cover page for this chapter has Irene holding baby Urza. First reading this chapter, I knew Irene was the cliffhanger of last chapter, but I was like, why did we get a flashback scene that we've already gotten as the cover for this chapter? This cover makes a lot more sense when you actually read this chapter, because this very much fits into the theme of what this chapter was about. I think it's a pretty decent chapter, but I wish we would have just gotten something brand new instead of a shot that we've already gotten in Fairy Tale before. But either way, you get some more of Irene and Urza together. Picking up our chapter where we left off, Silene and Suzaku were talking, and then you had Irene just sneaking in on their conversation, with Silene noticing her at the time, and Suzaku can clearly not see Irene, and I love the excuse that she uses to get Suzaku out of there. Silene just said that the spirit that she can see is naked, and oh, you want to see it? And that was enough to just have Suzaku book it out of there. Reading Irene's response to Silene making the whole naked excuse, with her saying, "Oh dear, I was trying to wear clothes today. Do I look naked?" Does that mean the whole time that she's been with Wendy, she's chose to be naked this whole time? Which Silene was able to pick up that Irene was inside of Wendy all this time. Irene's pretty impressed by it, because she's not bad that you caught on to me. And you get Irene and Silene introducing each other, which Silene does know Irene's last name, and she knows that it came from a dragon, and that she wasn't actually legit born as a dragon. She was born a human but learned Dragon Slayer magic and all that. Which you get Irene continuing to explain her backstory with Dragon Slayer magic and whatnot. Which, as Irene was explaining it, Silene did mention Elfensair a bit. Basically, kind of Irene was comparing herself to him and whatnot, which Irene really has no chill towards Elfensair, because she's I have no idea about this law dragon business, and that old guy does not look very wise to me. Which I love the face that she's making when she's doing this diss towards him. I love that Silene's even heard the rumors of Irene, that 400 years ago there was a country queen who invented Dragon Slayer magic, and that she became the mother of Dragon Slayer magic. Irene finishes up her backstory section here by saying, there's many reasons for everything that happened, but I lost my body and I had to enchant myself into Wendy. This next conversation that they're having here is very interesting, because if Irene didn't have this conversation with Silene, I wonder what Silene would have done. So Silene asks, can you and Wendy coexist? And Irene's just well, yeah, we've been doing it for a while now. I guess the whole unfinished business thing that Silene was talking about in previous chapters, she was actually meaning that towards Wendy and Irene. And since she said the whole I can coexist with her, then there's no need for her unfinished business. And Irene's just well, what the heck are you meaning by that? And for Silene, she was well, Wendy had a tremendous amount of magic power within her, but far too much for someone at her age. So I thought she had been possessed by some kind of yokai, and I'd use a gate to remove it from her. So she thought that Irene was a yokai. Since the two are coexisting in each other, Silene just thought it was no big deal then, and leave them be. For Irene, that was the right answer, because she's oh, you were worried about Wendy, so you are how I thought you were. But you get Irene talking about coexisting with the dragons, and she understands how those dragons saw humans, that a dragon like her will be needed in the future, and they cannot afford to lose her. Which Irene's really accepted this whole death thing, because she's I don't fear death, I've lived long enough. Which she's gotten the wrong idea, because Irene says, no, I wasn't talking about you as a dragon, I was talking about you living as a human. Your face was filled with hope, and you have to live. And with that, Irene offers a deal that with her power over gates and her power to enchant, both their wishes will come true. And Irene starts an enchantment between her and Silene, and I guess Wendy as well. And she is enchanting herself with the Curse of a Dragon's Wound, which will also affect Wendy for a little bit, because it shows her being in a little bit of pain. And with that wound, her life is now connected to Silene, and she wants her to listen to her wish. And Silene's just well, why the heck did you just wound yourself? Why not give it to some rando on the street. And I guess that enchantment she can only cast on herself, or rather Wendy in this case. But she needed to do this to temporarily separate herself from Wendy, and during that time she'll be able to take herself to another world through a gate. And Silene immediately knows what this is going to cause. She's like, if you do that, you're gonna die. And Irene already knows that because she says, I've already died. And because of her magic power, not even death will be the end for her. And Irene says to her, you were talking about your child earlier. I have a daughter myself. I despised her. I even tried to kill her. I was a truly horrible mother. And at the end of her life, she was finally able to regain a sliver of that motherly feeling. And by remaining in this world, she was able to continue seeing her daughter. And then she realized the magnitude of what she tried to steal and how great of a sin she had committed. Which Silene's like, well, why wouldn't you just want to keep watching over her? And Irene says that she can't do that and she has no right to be her mother. And if things go on like this, it will poorly affect Wendy in the future. So Irene asks Silene to kill her, that she is the only one that can do it. Silene agrees to this, no problemo. She's like, I won't hesitate, And Irene's like, well, that's why I asked you. And Silene's like, well, you're gonna die to atone for your sins then? And Irene is like, not quite. In order to prove myself as a mother, I can't pretend that I didn't die back then. And with that, they thank each other and they start casting the spell. You get a shot of Wendy kind of in pain, then calm, then a shot with her crying, with Irene saying, thank you for everything, Wendy. You get kind of like an ether world, I'm gonna guess. You get Irene saying, even if it's another world, there's no meaning in a place without magic power. And then you get another speech bubble from Silene saying, why is that? And Irene saying, well, carrying this wound, I would also give it to someone else who did nothing wrong. I would likely die, but at the same time, I would also kill someone else. And Irene asks, do you know a world where my enchantments cannot be used? And Silene says, I know just the place. So you get one final shot of Irene's body just floating in nothingness, with her final words saying, with this, it's finally over. I will disappear. Urza, live strong for me. And with that, we cut back over to Edelus of all places, and you get Sugar Boy just spinning around like a madman. And I'm absolutely blanking on this guy's name from Edelus, but I know it was like one of the lieutenant guys, with him saying, could you like totally stay still for a sec? And Sugar Boy's just in the background, I can't help myself. With those two getting very riled up, you get Boro telling him to quiet down. And as he's scolding the two, you get Jalal walking in, and they're all excited that their king has arrived. And they ask him the question, was it a boy or a girl? And Jalal says it was a girl, and her name is Irene. Also means that Jalal and Urza and Edelus fully got together and they fully had a baby together. And with that, it is the end of our chapter. So my thoughts. So I knew Mashima was really hyping this chapter, like he was saying, you're not going to be ready for chapter 121. For me, I definitely understand why Irene didn't want to face Urza, because she knows the pain that she's caused upon Urza. And Urza said pretty much everything she's needed to say to Irene in her fight against her. And I think it was very taxing on Wendy to forever have Irene inside of her. So I can totally get why Irene wants to do this, and also the fact that, she's already said she's already died. She's basically just a ghost at this point. She just wants to be dead. For me, I'm cool with her going out this way. Again, like I said, everything that Urza needed to say to Irene, she already did. If they met again in the story, I don't know even what is there to say. Obviously you could have had Irene crying and, forgiveful of like what she did to Urza. She's not going to have a physical body. She's just going to be living in Wendy. I don't know if you really want to put that all on Wendy. I know the biggest question is, the last time we saw Edelus was, I don't know, like 20, 30-ish chapters ago. we did see both Jalal and Urza during that time, and Urza Nightwalker, during the time we saw her, did not look pregnant at all. For one, Irene did an enchantment with Silene, so it wouldn't shock me if there's some weird magic shenanigans going on there. But secondly, we also don't know how much time has passed since we were last in Edelus, so for all we know, it could have been months. I don't know how I entirely feel about Irene being reborn into Edelus, because it's a little weird when you really think about it for a second. Irene gave birth to Urza, and then she dies, and then Urza is giving birth to Irene. That's a little weird when you start to really think about it. But I guess in a way, if you really wanted to get metaphoric with it, Urza really did transform Irene, because she was honestly pretty much a monster before, she met up with Urza yet again and they fought. Seeing everything that Urza's been doing throughout 100-Year Quest really has changed her perspective. This reborn life is basically a chance for her to atone for her sins. So I guess if you think about it like that, yeah, it works out just fine. To be real though, I was not expecting Irene to be dead in this chapter, and I wasn't expecting to see Edelus again, let alone Jalal and Urza in Edelus actually having a child together. Pretty crazy that all the Edelus couples have already ended up together and had kids already, and then the Earthland group has not made any moves whatsoever. Both Fairy Tail and Eden Zero this week had really almost heartwarming endings to each of their chapters in different ways. I do think this is a very nice way to end off Irene. I think if you would have kept it going, it could have gotten very messy with how do you deal with her within Wendy and whatnot. Better to probably get rid of it now. But what did you guys think of this chapter? What do you think of Jalal and Urza and Edelus having a child together? Leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and this is Drago signing out.